If you're studying for a Cambridge English or other exam where you have to show your ability to write in English, you're going to want to show you can be flexible with the types of sentences you use. Most of these exams are looking for a mix of simple, compound, and complex sentences, just like you would do in your writing outside of an exam, right? The idea here is to show that you can have flexibility in the way you express yourself and in the way you shape these sentences and in your style. So this video will show you some easy ways to make sure you're using all three types as you prepare for your exam or when you're writing in academic English or business English, just to show you can do all three types, right? Get into the nuance and specifics a little more. We'll then talk about how you can adapt one type of sentence to the other to make sure you have the exact right type of mix when you take that exam. Let's get started. I'm Erin Lebax. This is High Value Writing, and I'm glad you're here. First item of business, how do we know which sentence is simple, compound, or complex? Well, there are a couple of easy ways to remember. The simple sentences have one subject and verb. If you have listened to or read some of the high value writing content, you might have heard me use the words who and what. So you can use either. Simple sentence, you need a subject and a verb, or you need a who and a what. Who and what are they doing? She prepared for the essay. Okay, and after we review this, we'll get into how to set up a paragraph that uses a mix of these, okay? Compound sentences, it just needs to have two of each, two subjects, two verbs at different times in the sentence. And those two different times are going to be separated by something like an and or a but. So compound sentence, you basically have two parts. They are brought together by and, but, or, sometimes so. I haven't included it here because it's a little confusing. But both sides, the stuff before the and or but or and the material after, they both need to have their own subject and verb. So we can have she prepared for her essay, but her friend didn't study. So we have one subject and verb who what, another subject and verb who what. The other thing that's important here is both parts of the sentence are equal here. One is not in charge of the other. One does not make the other happen. To put it grammatically, one does not depend on the other. She can study if she wants to. Her friend can study if she wants to. Not depending on each other, not related. That's why that sentence is compound, not complex, because we have two parts that are fairly equal and can stand on their own. Complex, though, we still have two parts, we still have two subjects and two verbs, but now this part and this part, one is kind of the boss of the other. And you'll know which because the words that connect them are now going to be more like relationship words. After this happened, this happened. Before this happened, this happened. Although I like this, I don't like that. Right? We're showing a slight relationship between the two, and only one side of that sentence can really stand on its own. Her friend finished her essay. I could put a period there. That's how we know that is the main clause. Now we have this before I even started mine. That wouldn't really be a sentence on its own. But the before is connecting here, so we're able to have her friend finished her essay. I hadn't even started mine. But the before connects them in a way where they're not equal. One is more in charge of the other. One is more dependent on the other. Let's look at this a little more and kind of get into this idea of how we connect the two different sentences. Again, simple, we are not using a connector word to connect two parts because there's only one part. My colleague studied biology, one thing. Compound, though, we always have a connector. Like I said, it's but, and, or. Sometimes people say so. It's a little confusing because so can also be used like therefore, so I'm not including it here. We can see how it works though. My colleague studied biology, but I studied economics. Connector with the word but. Again, these two concepts are equal. My studies and my colleagues did not depend on each other. They're independent. Complex, now we are using the connectors like before, after, if, when, because, where one situation is depending on the other happening, the other's timing, the other being different. So here I'm going to use after, difference in timing. After graduating in biology, my colleague also studied chemistry. After she graduated in biology, my colleague also studied chemistry. So we have two things, but they're not equal because one happened after the other, depends on the other. All right, so we know what the sentences are. Now let's talk about how we can consider that. What makes it different, whether it's a compound or complex? Let's look at those two sides and whether they're equal and independent or not. Simple sentences does not apply to this question. Compound sentences, just to reiterate, review, both sides, both clauses, they're equal. The meeting started late, the agenda wasn't shared. I could have reversed the order. The agenda wasn't shared and the meeting started late. Another good sign that those are equal independent clauses. It's harder to do that when you get to the complex, where we have one clause depending on the other. So the one on the left, the one on the right is going to be sort of more the boss of that sentence, the more dominant core sentence. The meeting started late because their supervisor was still collecting data, is depending and explaining why the meeting started late. All right, so let's get into some quick tricks here so you can be sure you create a good mix. I'm going to offer a couple of little structures you can use and then a way to change simple and compound sentences to complex. So the first structure I would consider, you can just use this formula for a paragraph. Make your topic sentence compound, make an explanatory sentence right after that complex, and wrap it up with simple, which is like to the point, right? I like using a compound sentence for my topic sentence because it means I have two things to cover in that paragraph, right? A simple sentence doesn't give you that much. So children who participate in sports benefit in multiple ways, and so do their parents. Their parents also benefit. While they're kids, now that while is the complex. While one thing is happening, another is happening. We have a dependency here. While their kids are learning teamwork and dedication, their parents get outside and connect socially with other parents while watching. Okay, now I'm going to wrap it up. Ultimately, the whole family, one subject, can enjoy one verb a day playing or watching sports. So you can see how you could just have that formula in mind when you take your test. I'm going to do compound, complex, simple, real easy. Another easy one is just to reverse the first two. A complex sentence can give you a great topic sentence as well with two complex things to consider. I'm going to use although in this one. Although both wind and solar power can be easy to capture in the desert environments, solar is more widely used. I've created, right? Although this, there's this other thing. Now I have a lot to explain, which is just what we want in a writing test or a situation. So now I'm going to say both wind and solar can cut power costs, and they both reduce our carbon footprint. Compound, those are both equal. We're saving money, we're reducing carbon footprints. Now I'm going to wrap it up. However, solar power is more popular, like I said in that first complex sentence. So it makes a neat little package when you do complex, compound, simple as well. Okay, lastly, a trick to take simple to compound, simple to complex, and lastly, compound to complex. If you feel like a lot of your writing includes simple sentences and you want more variety, try these things out. If you're taking an exam, definitely try some of these out, right? Imagine you have a simple sentence, they are vegetarians. Easy ways to change that into compound, add an and then a similar subject and verb, or add a but and a differing subject and verb, which is what I did in the example. They are vegetarians, but their kids aren't. And you can usually see where your story will go after you add an and or a but. So simple to complex, it's a little bit similar, right? But I need to consider the relationship a little more since the two parts won't quite be equal. So instead of immigration to the United States rose during the 90s, I might say complexity with after, comparing times and what happened. After legal changes in the late 1980s, immigration to the US rose during the 90s. We can see how one depended on the other, right? And then your last formula or kind of idea here, when you have compound sentences, if you're quite good with using and or but and adding more, maybe you want to make some of those complex. And what you can do is look at what's different, that you could set up an although or a while, or what happens before and after, where you could set up a time difference. So let's start with many families benefit from the new tax structure, but adults with children over 18 years of age do not benefit. Two equal things again, right? I'm going to do one of these, what's different, although these families benefit, these ones won't. Or after years of a different tax structure, now we have families with this new situation, right? So I can go from compound to complex fairly easily. And if you remember those paragraphs where we did topic sentence, explanatory, and concluding sentence with the different shapes, you can really create an exam in English where each of your paragraphs has that variety just built in. All right, so please try these out and let me know what your questions are. I'm ready to help you with your test. I'm ready to answer your questions in the comments. So let me know what you'd like to see more examples of, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. All right, thank you so much for being here. I'll see you soon.